door there. We pick the milk cards and we...
I don't know if there is any day I've been in and also the rest of our consultants.
Good morning, everybody. 3, 1. As a country, we have made impressive and monumental strides in our electoral and democratic process, especially after the enactment of the new constitution. I don't know whether it's new anymore, but after the constitution 2010. Indeed, Kenya has been hailed as a beacon of electoral democracy in the region, and according to the ELOG reports and experts' opinion on the same, Kenya's elections have gradually improved with every election since 2013, with successive elections being conducted better than the previous ones. And I think we are all Kenyans and we can attest to this. However, Kenya's history of elections has also documented the bad and the ugly aspects, notably the disputed electoral and especially presidential outcome and the emotive election spirit that we always experience. So there is the good part. We have improved a lot as a country, but there are areas, of course, we have experienced challenges, and these are areas we continue to look at as friends, as families, as Kenyans. After its observation mission for the 2022 electoral process, ELOG produced and published its final observation report, and this was titled From the Ballot to the Portal, which detailed findings and recommendations on the conduct of the 2022 election process, and also produced another report which we titled Catalyzing Change in Partnership with the CSOs and Technical Working Group on Elections and the Uchaguzi Platform.
So one of the key findings in terms of trust levels, which was highlighted by a context issue by Marcus, is that 44% have not trust in IEBC. Now, it's important that we put this in context. These are the people speaking. Remember, there is the ELOG report, which was a technical report on the observation. But this is now what the people are saying, based on the survey and the work which was done. There is no trust in the IEBC. The ones who trust IEBC are 32%, and 24% are very neutral. So they have a neutral opinion. IBC is also seen as ill-prepared, under state capture and controlled by external forces. There is also the feedback that we got in terms of that the capture of the EMB was localized, with polling stations being the new frontier of the capture. And if you go into the report, one of the things that is good that Madam Kurutu is here, if you go inside the report, some of the things that they say is that you go to a polling station and they tell you, we know who the people who have been employed are. We know which family they come from, because they know them. And then we know also the political persuasion of those particular individuals. So there is that localization story, which you couldn't see, of course, when you're doing our technical report. But when you ask the people, they tell you, we think they are biased. Whether that bias, of course, results in some malpractice is another story altogether, but that's their feeling. On the voter register, 70% found, and it's very interesting because we thought when the issue of the biometric kits and other things, we thought we were going to make things easier. But they say that 70% of the voter registration process was complicated or complex. Nairobi, very interestingly, Nairobi, 74%, cost 72%, Rift Valley 70%, are the highest rates in terms of those who view this process as complicated. So again, you're wondering, in these urbanized zones, where is this story coming from? So those are questions we need to interrogate moving forward. Schools were offered as the best centers for registration with 64%. In terms of voter education, and remember, just giving you a highlight so that you can be able to read the report. So it's not everything on voter registration, you'll be able to get more from the report. On voter education, this scored very well. Many citizens say they are well informed on the various processes and political rallies from the various sources, the political rallies, the community forums, social media, religious places, the radio and TV, and they also recognize the importance of voter education. We have the members of the special interest groups largely feeling that they have been left out of this effort to educate. And we know how critical the question of education then serves for voters. So on the SIG, that's where the score is negative. So I think basically what we're trying to say is that there is an interesting aspect where people want to use the party manifesto, or the manifestos being shared in the campaigns, but they are not participating in those political parties themselves. And by the way, you know the statistics that we also have in this country, where the ORPP has more members in joining political parties than Ruth Kululu here at IBC. IBC registers was 22.1. The ORPP register of members in a political party is more than 24 million. So it's very interesting how people join political parties more and participate less in voting. Something that perhaps as actors we need to interrogate further. There is improved participation in the SIGs that's the special interest groups in the electoral process. There is also a survey showed an improvement in the number of women and SIG candidates. I think that is also out there. Women aspirants and candidates faced a much more hostile political environment, including propaganda, smear campaign, and violence. Youth participation increased, but majority of them were elected as MCS. I think this is in terms of candidates. So we had many of them participated in the MCS. And then persons with disabilities face barriers most reaching parliament through nominations. So again, in terms of getting PWDs to getting directly elected, the process is much more difficult. Political participation for women, youth, and PWDs fell far short of international standards and failed to meet Kenya's constitutional requirements, especially on the one-third gender quota. And some participants expressed the need to remove the provisions on the two-thirds gender rule. So there are those also who are saying this thing has become too cumbersome. If you cannot be able to implement it, then just get it out. But that was a very small number. Just thought it was important to mention. Let me move to quickly to the recommendations which came from this report. Number one is that, sorry, just a moment. So there's an issue of IEBC needing to broaden its understanding of SIGs by conducting a study to understand and ensure reasonable accommodation at the registration centers in addition to the access to polling stations. So the question of accessibility to polling stations for SIG needs to be addressed by IEBC. We also require enhanced transparency and accountability to enforce, to curb irregularities during voter registration, which is one of the issues which is making it complicated. There is a need for systematic public awareness campaigns to educate individuals of the importance of voter registration, again because of the complexity involved or what has been reported. Flexible registration options for SIGs given their realities. For example, the nomadic lifestyle of pastoralist communities should be considered by introducing mobile voter registration. If it is there, I don't know. I think it's a discussion that we've been having. It is there. So I think maybe it is, the people are saying their man may not be aware of it. So maybe we need robust engagement again on that area. Staggered mass voter drives targeting the pastoralist communities, especially before they move to look for pasture. Partnerships and stakeholder engagement, where it's collaborating with local community leaders, civil society organizations, and other relevant stakeholders is essential. I think all those are means of recommendations to enhance the visibility of especially IBC engagements with the communities on voter registration and other processes. On voter education, introduction of voter education in schools to cultivate a sense of patriotism and civic duty for learners. Engage collaborators among them, CBOs, NGOs, religious communities in promoting voter education. I think that happens, but maybe a much more robust engagement. Use of social media platforms down there. But remember what we were saying earlier about the language and about the Gen Zs, the generation that we are targeting. Maybe we need to start to tweak our engagement with them through such platforms. Although in our other reports we are also reporting on fake news and disinformation, which is also carried by such platforms. Use of community-based workshops, barazas, and in conducting in-person workshops and training sessions in community centers. And the use of offline digital content such as videos and interactive presentations that can be distributed through USB drives. For the voting process, quick recommendations, elimination of the incidences of long queues in the country. I think one of the issues, these issues is being discussed. If you look at it from a citizen point of view, when people come, we all been voters. When you come to a voting station and you find a very long queue, there are people who have the passion to stay on, and there are those who say, well, I think these guys can vote for me, and they go back. Or they are also the issue of you're committed to another things, and when you go back, you don't ever come back to the so you need to address that issue, because there are very many people who are turned back by just that occurrence or that incident of finding a very long queue. So I think that's why it's an issue for the citizens. Clarify the guidelines on identification of voters. In cases of lost, misplaced national IDs, missing names, what is the guideline? And there's, I think in this respect, we had asked the IBC in the last election to provide us with the election day protocols. Because we need to also create visibility over the procedures. What needs to happen when somebody does not have this? What is the next thing to be done? So we all need to work together to create clarity on what the process is. Clean up the voter register and have the particulars checked by the registered voters on a continuous basis to avoid last-minute surprises. I think, if I'm not wrong, that happens at the constituency offices. The problem is that I don't think people know that they can actually walk into an IBC office and check on that. So because they're telling us we need it to be on a continuous basis. Oh, but you can see there's a report saying something. So we need to see where the gap is. Invest in backups in case of alphanumeric system fails. I think these are just general. I don't want to go to all this, try to get into something different so that, because you have the report and can be able to go through it. On voter security, there's a need for citizens to resist voter bribery, corrupt practices, and hold political parties accountable. So that is something in looking. I think they are saying, can we look within ourselves, maadili, issues about integrity in the entire voter process, those starts with the voters themselves. During the elections, IBC to ensure that all personnel, officials, and voters are adequately protected. There are issues about IBC and their security. In fact, in the run-up to that election, one of the things that we were very worried about was the safety of IBC officials because of what had happened during the by-elections which were running up to that election. So, and then we also saw what happened during the elections itself. So, protection is a big issue that needs to be taken on board. The police also need to come in terms of looking into the cases of political profiling, the harassment, assaults, injuries, as well as electoral legislation violation, and ensure that there is a prosecution of the offenders. Again, this is something that we have also raised in our reports, the question of enforcement of electoral offenses as a key issue. On the legal framework, a post-election audit is required to understand the strengths and the weaknesses of the overall. We have, IBC of course have conducted their evaluation of that process. What ELOG has been saying in addition to that is to conduct an external, much more comprehensive. We made a submission yesterday to the bipartisan talk.
But in 2022, people are able to register as observers from the comfort of their offices, homes, or wherever they were, even using their mobile phones, and we are getting to them. Unfortunately, it didn't work towards the end, and that's why, as you observed in his presentation, we are actually still giving out the badges up to the last day before the election. But we'll endeavor to ensure that in 2027, that does not happen. If possible, we'll be looking forward to stopping or to putting a deadline at least 30 days before the election day. And of course, there were also other reasons, including the stakeholders' interest in the process in 2022, more than 2017. And that's why the number went up from 58 to 120,000. And of course, again, as he has indicated, we are going to vet and ensure that we get out more professional observers than pop-ups and part-timers. We'll try our level best to do that. Now, coming to also the results, as Dr. Mule put it, Mr. Mule put it, it will be very hard for us to ban elections or political players from the tallying center unless we put it in law. And remember, they are the same people who are going to pass that law. So it will be very hard. That's the same way we have been struggling on how to put our campaign finance act or bill go through, because they are the same people who will be affected. But we'll try our level best to do that. Again, on engaging the media, we tried our best to do it. Unfortunately, they gave contradicting figures. But we have decided, given your report, ELOG, we have decided that we'll use Media Council of Kenya to collaborate, all the media houses, so that the figures they give the public or the citizens in 2027 are coordinated. They'll come from MCK and not just IBC, MCK, then to the media houses. So we'll ensure that that is collaborated. How about ensuring that all the results are transmitted electronically? The law or the constitution only provides for presidential. Again, if we have to involve the other 5 positions, it has to go into the law because it's a cost attached to it. And we have to be funded by the government. So again, that will require a lot to be put in. How about the first past the post electoral system, where the winner takes it all? Again, it has to be embedded in the law. So that maybe the law says whoever wins gets 60% and whoever loses gets 40% of the seats, or whatever happens, or the activities in the country. Otherwise, as IBC, our hands are held, our hands are tied. We cannot change that. We'll still maintain that until it comes out very clearly for us to implement. During our presentation at the National Dialogue, we gave that as a proposal that let us avoid having winner takes it all, because it is even the thing that is affecting our trust levels. I can confirm here that I was a county returning officer before I was elevated to the position which I hold now. About doing voter education in schools, we have started, and we are working with KICD. We are hoping that it will be incorporated in that citizenship docket, so that the students or our pupils are able to be taught. Now, when I come to cross-cutting issues, voter education, which again ELOG emphasized in their report and the recommendations, our hands are tied as IBC. Why? Because we are funded. This is a mandate we are given in the Constitution. So it is supposed to be funded by the government. Unfortunately, they give us money the last year to elections. And that's why you see IBC running all over, yeah? Trying to educate people, trying to get voter educators, voter education providers, using the interior officers to educate people. We have actually suggested to the government that kindly just divide the money with 5 years, so that you give us money for year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, up to 5, so that by the time we get to the 5th year, we are just concluding. But that hasn't happened. In fact, the people who come in to fill the gap are USAID and related partners, who come in to fill. But the government has been delaying until the last year. But what if they give us the money now? They would actually run with it up to 2027.
The office of the Ombudsman has a role to ensure that when the citizenry of this country are looking for that information, the information is shared as it should. So in that respect, the office of the Ombudsman also is mandated to protect the sovereignty of the people, that is the Kenyans, and of course secure constitutionalism. And in that sense, and with that clear understanding, that forms the participation of the Office of the Ombudsman in the observing of election. That then is the reason why we are here to share with all of you what were the experiences, what were the gaps that we identified, and what are the recommendations that the Office of the Ombudsman thought should share with all of you here today. Our experience from the election monitoring was, of course, generated from 126 observers that we deployed to the field, both long-term observers and short-term observers. And we were spread through 33 counties throughout Kenya. On the E-Day, we had almost, of course, we were in almost 700 polling stations throughout the country. So this gave us an opportunity to give a position, as I explained earlier, on the monitoring and observing of the elections. During those processes, we were able to look at different stages, like for example, the voter registration. We participated at the 2 phases of voter registration, so we observed, and I'm happy that as I will share with you quickly later, the findings that ELOG has shared are similar to the findings that we have as a commission. We participated in monitoring and observing the campaigns. Why? Because this is at the heart of our work and our mandate as the Office of the Ombudsman. Why? Because we look at to what extent do public officers, or to what extent are they involved in the campaigning or during the campaigning period, and to what extent this has implication on the service delivery. And this is, of course, a key aspect that is unique or distinguishes our Ombudsman from other observers. And on the same note, the Office of the Ombudsman also looked at to what extent were public resources, these are vehicles among others, were used during that campaigning period. And when IBC and other relevant agencies of course have legal and capacity to ensure that those who are bounded, in case they were found, to what extent were they able to do this? We also looked at or observed whether the law or legal provisions and all procedures were followed. So we looked at administrative malpractices during that period. We were also able to monitor the verification of the presidential candidate. And this is because, if you look at the ELOG's report, it observed that the issue of trust or mistrust, the percent was, of course, very low, the issue of trust. Issues around integrity. People raised issues around integrity. So we were looking at whether the verification, for instance, meets the threshold as established within the Constitution under the Leadership and Integrity chapter. Why? Because they will of course have an implication of participation or not, citizen not participating during the election at all. Whenever people have integrity questions, those who've been involved in abuse of office or perhaps denied access to information, among other things. Now, to quickly highlight this, because of course of the issue of time, we of course agreed with ELOG's observation when he pointed out that the issue of voter registration, the voter registration process was not very simple as it should. It was complex. And the citizens experienced a lot of frustrations. Like, for example, in our report, there are good things that we highlighted, like on the issue of voter education. It was done, it was well done, to help people understand when or where to go and do registration. But then, the truth is many Kenyans who are only thinking of the mass registration period, other than knowing that IBC is always open through their offices at the county to be doing registrations. And this, in a way, affected why they could not get or achieve the targets that you had put, IBC had put for yourself. There was phase 1 and phase 2, but still, the target number was not achieved. We also observed, of course, our mandate around access to information. We were able to assess the extent to which information was shared to the citizens so that they could use this information during that period. Of course, IBC plus other partners plays a very, very important role in this or around sharing of information to the citizen. But we also observed that especially during the mass registration, many people will go, for example, at the registration desk without the proper documentation. Some of them will carry, for example, copies of ID to the registration desks. And for me, or for us, this explained the issue of civic education. Were they taught before on what are the proper documents to carry for registration? Going to perhaps a matter around on the issue on voter registration transfer, for example, all of you know that it only happens at the county level or at the county offices. Many people did not know this. They will just go at the registration centers scattered around the county. Okay? And that might have led to why many people will go to the registration desk and they were told that you need to go to the county headquarters, and some of them will not actually go when we followed up. So, and that might have led to the reason why IBC could not achieve the target that they had put for themselves. And also there were requirements that one had to come with for the information to be transferred. Like, for example, proving your residency of a certain area. So they will tell the citizen, come with the bill, the water bill, or electrical bill, or a letter from the chief to prove where you live. And many people felt they did not have this kind of information. The question was, they really need to review perhaps these regulations so that we see what are the best ways to facilitate this process without requiring much of this documentation. Of course, we know there's a political angle to this that we all appreciate. There are controls, of course, on why the regulations, why you will want to do this, but does it have an impact on the registration process at the end? And what are the best ways that you will want to do this so that it does not, of course, affect the registration, the entire registration process? So that is something that IBC will want to think through. When it comes to campaigns, monitoring campaigns, which I have highlighted earlier, we were able to monitor the campaigns period on that phase. And we really want to appreciate IBC for working with the timelines. You really worked within the time, you adhered to the timelines from the beginning to the end. To that, we really appreciate. There were few maladministration issues that we could note. Like for example, the advertisements, especially the incumbency, they will advertise using the public resources, or they will campaign using public resources. The current office holders will take opportunity of using the resources that they have. Sometimes they will hide behind launching projects, but then they will call media and social media in the launching of the project, which in a way they're still campaigning. Launching of different programs, for instance. They will put on social media, we're able to do this, they will put on first or second page of newspaper to show that, of course, there is this project that we're going to launch, but in real sense, what they were doing was a campaign. It was a campaign strategy for them. And more fundamentally, we observed that many public officers were part of the teams that were campaigning around the country. And you know how controversial that was, or how that became. And I'm happy that the current regime has actually appreciated that. And perhaps they need to see, not from the general perspective, but perhaps are there legislation amendments that should be done, because of course the laws are there, or on how far the CSS, for instance, can participate. And the civil servants are actually not even allowed to participate. There are clear legislations around this, but then what is it that we can make sure we are able to do so that we can minimize this? So that we avoid the issue of people having expectations that candidate A will win, and then at the end candidate B wins, and then now it brings all the emotions that we will experience. But from the citizenry perspective, it affected the level of service delivery. You can imagine, for example, when a CS or a PS are away from the office for almost weeks or months, then what happens in their office on issues of approvals, among other things, is a serious implication of service delivery within their ministries. So one of the recommendations that we strongly made, was to have legislations around this.
I'm very glad we did do the focus